See, I'm riding high, whoa. Kind of broke the city, y'all, so all I got is fire. I got fire.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. It's Dr. Shiva Ayyadurai, and we have a very, very important discussion today on a set of mathematical analysis that we've done that reveals some unfortunate truths about our U.S. voting systems. And specifically, we're going to be reviewing the Michigan voting results in 4 counties. So as people are joining, I also want to share with you, we're joined by 2 great guests, Benny Smith, who Benny and I did a video before, and also a new guest, Phil Evans, and I'll give their backgrounds and I'll wait until people join. We live in a world right now of media companies who cherry pick what they want. They have an agenda. So it really comes down to us. And one of the themes of today's conversation is that, yes, there's an election taking place. And every time there's an election, everyone gets all urgent about that election issue. But we need to take a step back, and we have a great opportunity today to really start looking at much more fundamental issues about what it means to be a citizen, which is we're supposed to have democratic processes. And the fact is, for far too long, you and others and many people have been sleeping. We've outsourced our decision-making to politicians who have their agendas. And we have ended up with voting systems where the input and the outputs are unverifiable. And you're going to see that in a very profound way in today's discussion. But most importantly, I think the key takeaway is it's time that you get educated or be enslaved. And this is beyond a left or right discussion. This is beyond Republican and Democrat. This is beyond black and white. It's supremely fundamental. For those of you who are new to me, the area of math and science is something I've had to do for a long time to get a bunch of degrees at MIT, but I'm a scientist, inventor, and engineer, a Fulbright scholar. The election has not been certified in Massachusetts. I'm still a U.S. Senate candidate in Massachusetts. Benny Smith, Benny's a software engineer. Benny, you're also an election commissioner, right?
That's right.
And a data analyst. And Benny was one of the first people who discovered, probably the first person who discovered, and we'll get into that, the fact that our votes are stored as decimal fractions. Very, very important. But Benny's very, very committed to election integrity. So great to have you, Benny.
Thank you for having me.
On the phone, we have Phil Evans, who is, like myself, Phil is a fellow engineer, a Bachelor of Science in Engineering. By the way, Benny's been a computer programmer. He's an avid software engineer, well adept at it. But Phil, you went to Clemson. You're also an inventor and engineer. And Phil, when you work as an engineer, you learn some math, and Phil has done some great work, which we're going to share with you as a data analyst. What I want to talk about before we jump into this is some very, very basic concepts everyone should understand. You can look at other videos that we did earlier on this whole election integrity issue, but fundamentally, if you think about that box as your voting system, as in any system, there's an input that comes in and an output that comes out. And evidence is something where it's the inputs and the outputs should be unambiguous, so you can predict in a very clear way. Evidence is fundamentally unambiguous predictions. And what you'll realize is in the current system that we have, the input to our voting systems, we don't have voter registration card. We don't really have authentication. Some places do. We don't really get receipt to the person that actually voted. So you don't really can prove that it was you who came into that precinct and voted. So you can't really prove that. And the conclusion is there's no definitive proof of your voting. So the input here, you could argue, has some issues with it. The other part is the output. So for example, we're assuming that the output actually reflects what took place in the voting. So for example, if the input was 30 voters came in and 10 voters voted for A and 20 voters voted for B, the out should be 30 votes, 30 ballots. And in fact, in the machine counted votes, we'll talk about their ballot images. So if 10 votes for A, so you should get 20 votes for B. All of this is true under the governing principle that the system cannot change the output. Okay, now if that is possible, then there is ambiguity since the output can be manipulated, which means that the evidence is not evidence. So simply put, you get some inputs coming in. What we're saying today in the United States voting systems, the inputs are not unambiguous. And the outputs, as we'll see shortly, can be manipulated. Okay, but we assume that the inputs are clean and the outputs are clean, and that's what we all want. Ultimately, all of us as Americans, or for and free people, we want election integrity, and that's what ultimately we want to get to. Again, just to review, ballots can be hand counted. People actually review them. They look for your little hand counted ballots, or they can be machine counted. They convert your ballot in the machine counted into an image, which is called a ballot image. And those ballot images are then tabulated. So in that incident, when it's machine counted, to be clear, ballot images are not something trivial. They are the ballots because they are what is counted. Unfortunately, many of the states, Benny, correct me if I'm wrong, many of them are getting away not saving these ballot images. Am I right?
Yeah, there are places where there are pending lawsuits to force the states and the county to preserve those ballot images, but for the large amount of the population, they were destroying them.
So let's jump right into Michigan. I know everyone's waiting for this. I hope you enjoy this, and we'll have Q&A. Jen will help us with that. So in Michigan, there's around 86 counties, and what was analyzed here was a top 4 counties were analyzed: Oakland County, Macomb County, Kent County, and Wayne County. By the way, all the data we're looking at, there's 2 sets of data: the early voting data, and then the voting data on election day. In some cases, in Kent County and Wayne County, we combined them. But so there's 2 sets of data. So let's proceed. Now, the executive summary, this is what you're going to get out of this. So if you need to leave right now and you got to run off to do something, the conclusion of this, which we like to present up front, is that there are in the 3 major counties that were analyzed out of the 4, Trump's margin was reduced by a minimum of 138,000 votes. I'll repeat that. President Trump's margin was reduced by a minimum of 138,000 votes. So what that means is Trump's vote total was decreased by 69,000, and Biden's vote total was increased by 69,000. In short, 69,000 votes were transferred from Trump to Biden in these counties. And they varied across those counties, but a total of 69 counties.